Hey, everybody. Welcome to the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. Very excited about our show today. We have Tim Miller. But first, let's get to two big things.
Taken as a whole, the video record does not support the claim that January 6th was an insurrection. In fact, it demolishes that claim. And that's exactly why the Democratic Party and its allies in the media prevented you from seeing it. The crowd was enormous. A small percentage of them were hooligans. They committed vandalism. You've seen their pictures again and again. But the overwhelming majority weren't. They were peaceful. They were orderly and meek. These were not insurrectionists. They were sightseers.
That was Tucker Carlson on his show Monday night. This was the culmination of his week-long investigation after House Speaker Kevin McCarthy gave him 44,000 hours, exclusive access to those 44,000 hours of videotape from January 6th. How could he do that? How could 2 years later, after all we know, after all we've seen, after 500 people pleading guilty, like, is it that Tucker Carlson is out of his mind, or is it that he thinks the audience is so stupid? Like, what is the end goal here? And this is all done, by the way, in the middle of a $1.6 billion defamation suit where this Monday night, Tucker Carlson is basically saying, fuck you, Dominion, fuck you, suit. Like, I'm just going to keep doing it. Like, they're still spreading this big lie, even knowing that there's serious legal and financial consequences that are going to result from it.
I mean, Tucker's problem started, I think, long before this. And his mom left him when he was 6 years old. And then when she died, she left him and his brother $1. And he sued to get the estate. And he won, actually. We see this over and over again. Trump's parents were awful, and this is how we got Trump. And Tucker's parents were awful, and this is how we got Tucker. He has no shame whatsoever, and there's no bottom.
But there are a lot of people whose parents are awful, and they're resilient, and they're not poisonous traitors.
Yeah, I didn't grow up in the Brady Bunch house. You know what I mean? I'm not calling insurrectionists sightseers.
I think that's where it
fuck?
started. He had to do a lot of it on his own.
What I wonder, though, is if I'm some dude named Joe sitting in my house, flipping open my beer can after I come home from a hard day's work, and I see Tucker Carlson say that, does it ever register in my head, like, I've seen the video, like
28%.
People weren't sightseers, like, or do they just go, "Yep, that's right, they were sightseers." Like, you know, when I go sightseeing, I beat the shit out of cops when I go to the Disneyland, and like, it's just crazy to me. All of it is crazy to me.
Well, it could be spun, the way that Tucker Carlson had said. Either it was Antifa or they're just cherry picking, and it validates what he's been saying all along.
No, I get that, but it's just like there is countless hours of videotape of thousands of people storming the Capitol, beating the shit out of cops, stealing things, desecrating and destroying property, walking through the hallways. Where's Nancy? We're coming to hang Mike Pence. Like, it's like that old Richard Pryor routine. Are you going to believe me or your lying eyes?
I think you have to just look at the ratings for Fox News, and they're old white men who constitute the 28% Trump MAGA base. And essentially, he's catering to them. And we know this from his comments that have come out in the Dominion lawsuit, that really feeding the lies to that base is the core of what keeps Fox News from losing its viewership to Newsmax and OAN.
It's just astounding. It is absolutely astounding. And it's even more unconscionable what McCarthy did to fuel this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, what McCarthy did was 70 years ago that we had a Boston lawyer talk to another McCarthy and say, have you no shame?
Right.
And we know this McCarthy has no shame.
So let's get to our second big thing of the week, CPAC, or what I like to call CPAC-a-con.
We will get rid of bad and ugly buildings. I want a baby boom. Oh, you men are so lucky out there. They want all electric stoves all over the country. But we don't have the electric power for that. The wall was sitting there waiting to be installed, the easiest part. They actually took it away and they hid it. They put it in a hiding area. All we do is investigate everybody. You ever see television? I was the only president in modern history who did not have any new wars. No new wars. I finished some old ones. They want windmills all over the place that ruin our fields, kill our birds.
That dude needs to be in an institution.
Mike Pence, what do you think of that?
Well, Jen, that's a really good question. I was watching. I said to Mother when she caught me masturbating in the bathroom, which of course I insisted I was thinking of her at the time, not very oily, greased up, very tan Hispanic men. You know, CPAC isn't what it used to be, Jen. I mean, the American people know it as a place where conservatives used to go and be conservative. Now it's just a bunch of cosplayers dressed like humans saying some really, really, really weird things. It's very disturbing. So CPAC, it's like a clown show.
It's only just sort of the essence. It's purified essence of what it has been, and Trump has purified it to that point of insanity.
I mean, you've got, Donald Trump Jr. was making fun of, he said the people in Pennsylvania elected a vegetable. I mean, this is the family they want to put back in the White House.
Can we get to the best part when Nikki Haley got heckled?
It's ridiculous.
I don't believe that for a second. Nikki Haley getting heckled at CPAC. And what is he talking about with windmills and gas stoves? And he's fine. You know, the MAGA people, if they went to a barbecue and like Uncle Lenny said those things, they'd all be like in a corner drinking a beer going, what the fuck is up with Uncle Lenny? Has anybody been like taking him to a doctor or anything? Is he on like fucking Prozac? What's up with Uncle Lenny? Talking about fucking gas stoves and windmills?
Matt Friend does not need to write a script. He just read it verbatim.
Oh,
There's no
God.
need for a script.
I was thinking that too, the exact same thing.
So we have an honorable mention this week with some breaking news last week. We learned that it's looking pretty likely that Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg is going to indict Donald Trump. And we know that because apparently, according to the legal minds that we speak to, when a DA invites someone in to testify before the grand jury, especially if he is the subject of the investigation, that signals not only that the investigation is coming to an end, but that an indictment is imminent. And Michael Cohen and other people have surmised that March is going to be the month that Trump gets indicted. But as Ellie Honig, who was on here recently, and others in the legal profession have said and reminded us of many times, there's a big gap between indictment and conviction. And so we're all going to be excited when he gets indicted, but the goal is to have him convicted. But an interesting question arises about what happens if he is indicted and he's hiding at that bedbug infested place down in Florida. Mar-a-Lago. All right, allegedly bedbug infested. I don't want to be sued by Donald Trump. This is what I heard. There's bedbugs and other things, but allegedly. Can he be automatically extradited? Like, he has to be arrested. When you're indicted, you get arrested. But, Manhattan DA's office doesn't have jurisdiction in Florida, so they have to work with the Florida authorities, Governor Ron Meatball DeSantis, and he has to either sign off or not on sending Trump back to New York. Now, there's laws on the books dating back from the 1700s and most recently a couple, 3 or 4 decades ago, I think 1987. The short answer is yes, he has to do it, but we're sort of seeing now that he can delay.
Prediction, he delays as much as he can because he wants to play to the MAGA base, and he will simply say that this is a sham, and eventually, of course, he'll be ordered to, and he'll be, of course, secretly very happy to extradite Trump, but I think he will delay this indefinitely.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of political currency to be earned, perhaps. Think about it. If Governor DeSantis says, I refuse to turn over Trump, but he knows that he has to, but it's probably going to take a week for a federal court to issue that mandate, it's a no-lose for him. Then he gets to say, hey, MAGAs, I I tried to protect
The
Donald Trump.
courts are rigged, he'll say.
So no lose situation for him. You
No
know?
lose.
So that brings us to winners and losers. Who wants to start?
My winner this week is New York State Attorney General Letitia James. She just won a civil case against the far-right despicable duo of Jacob Wall and Jack Berkman. They violated federal and state civil rights laws by using robocalls to suppress black votes during the 2020 election. And my loser is the wonderful Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders. This week, she actually signed a law that rolls back significant portions of the state's child labor protections. The new law eliminates requirements for the state to verify the age of children younger than 16. So now if you're 10, you can work very hard in Arkansas. So I guess you're a winner.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about Sarah Huckabee Sanders too, but I'm going to just phone it in and be the master of the obvious here with my loser. It's Fox News for being a lie machine that poisons and contaminates reality and the truth for ratings and money. And I'm just going to put a hard stop there. I can't even go on. My winner this week is Representative Eric Swalwell for calling out Representative Jim Jordan, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, for his January 6th hypocrisy with subpoena compliance.
My winner this week is Michigan's House of Representatives, who, despite Republican objections, voted to repeal a right-to-work law, codify LGBTQ rights, and expand gun background checks, all in one day. This is what happens when a state is fully controlled by Democrats. My loser, Tucker Carlson. Don't need to say any more. Which brings us to our weekly rant, which is going to be a little longer than usual. We now know through the release of various court filings in the $1.6 billion Dominion defamation suit against Fox News that the fake news network is in serious legal trouble. Rupert Murdoch and his primetime hosts and producers knew Donald Trump's big lie they relentlessly pushed was utter bullshit. A nightly campaign of malice and intent. The very two things crucial in proving defamation. But wait, it gets worse. This week, we witnessed perhaps the most egregiously anti-American, Putin-esque propaganda with the release Monday night of Tucker Carlson's video report following his week-long investigation. After being given exclusive access to 44,000 hours of January 6th video coverage by House Majority coward Kevin McCarthy. This is what Carlson told his viewers. Quote, "The video record does not support the claim that January 6th was an insurrection. In fact, it demolishes that claim. They were peaceful, they were orderly and meek. These were not insurrectionists, they were sightseers." The problem is the MAGAs only watch Fox. It's their only source of news. And that's the danger of Carlson's rewriting of history. There's no counter-narrative. Carlson's report was quickly condemned by several Senate Republicans. Mitch McConnell said, "It was a mistake, in my view, for Fox News to depict this in a way that completely at variance with what our chief law enforcement official here in the Capitol thinks." South Dakota Senator Mike Rounds said, "I thought it was an insurrection at the time. I still think it was an insurrection today." And North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis was pretty pissed off when he said, "I think it's bullshit. I was here." It is bullshit. Murdoch knew it. Carlson knew it. Sean Hannity knew it. They all knew it. Yet they rammed this bullshit down viewers' throats every night because they feared Trump and his brainwashed MAGA base and ultimately saw green over red, white, and blue. Because in the end, old Rupert cares more about the Benjamins than he does America's fragile democracy. But unfortunately, Fox viewers, from the MAGA extremists to the middle-of-the-road grandmas and grandpas sitting in their lazy boys sipping the Kool-Aid while munching on their fuck Brandon bars, will never know the truth because they're addicted to America's version of state TV. Let's bring out Tim Miller. Tim is the Bulwark's writer-at-large and the author of the best-selling book, Why We Did It, a travelogue from the Republican road to hell. He was previously political director for Republican Voters Against Trump, communications director for Jeb Bush in 2016, and spokesman for the Republican National Committee in 2012. He is an MSNBC political analyst and host of Not My Party on Snapchat. He has written about politics for Rolling Stone, The Ringer, and Playboy. And he's also appeared on several episodes of Showtime's The Circus. Tim, welcome into the back room.
Hey, brother. Good to be back.
Thanks for coming back. So I was speaking about coming back. I was very happy to see you back on the circus. And I'm not talking about CPAC.
I was happy to be back.
I'm not talking about
circus.
the CPAC circus. I'm talking about the Circus on Showtime. But you did go to CPAC. But before I ask you about that, is this? I know I asked you last time you were on. Like, is this like are we becoming a professional official co-host, or are we still in the flirtation stage?
Am I a clown? Am I one of the official clowns at the circus? That's a good question. A trapeze artist? Well, I don't know if you follow entertainment news much, Andy, with all of your political news hobby, but Showtime is being bought by like Paramount, which is owned by some other conglomerate, which is owned by the Scheinhart Wig Company. And so a lot of things are in flux over with our friends at Showtime. So I don't think that.
Is the show not good? It may not be aired anymore, or?
Well, no, I mean the show's still on. I'm not trying to create any news. I'm just saying that like there's a lot of uncertainty with what's happening with Showtime. They did get rid of some of the other shows and some of the stuff. They're now lobbing it into the Paramount Plus app. So for people who want to watch the circus, they don't have to be like, is this on Paramount or is this on Showtime anytime or is this on the other Showtime? So there's just there's corporate stuff happening that is well above my pay grade. It's just a guy that you put something in the teleprompter and I say what it says. And so anyway, I don't know. I'm hoping that everything gets ironed out for 24. I can be more involved on a permanent basis, but there are a lot of moving parts that are outside of my control. So in the meantime, I'm just gonna pop on when they want to have me.
Well, I love the show and I love you on it. And I want to ask you about that because you were on Sunday night's episode. You went to CPAC. You had a couple of interesting moments with Gorka and Kari Lake. So Gorka, you tried to ask a question and he calls you a dickhead or something like.
Yeah, Gorka called me a dickhead, so that's kind of a takes one to know one situation, or maybe it's a he who smelt it dealt it situation. I don't know, but yeah, Gorka. There were a couple that didn't make the show. We were at CPAC for days, so I talked to the Sarah Palin. Actually, didn't make the cut, and we had a nice exchange. Sarah was much more gracious than Mr. Gorka. It's kind of sad. Sarah's kind of in her Uncle Rico phase.
Yeah, what is she? Bit. So what is she? What does she do at CPAC? Like, what's her proposition at this point?
It's unclear. She was standing outside the anti-ranked choice voting booth. So I don't know if they paid for her to come or if she has some other grift going. Hard to know.
Well,
but
this
she
is
was
interesting. As one who has not been to CPAC and only sees clips of people who speak at CPAC, what you're describing is it like just like a regular convention where there are exhibits and people standing at booths and stuff? Like,
yeah, it's kind of like a car show downstairs.
So there's
like going to the car show.
So there's for every culture war issue, there's like a booth.
Yeah. So on stage, you have the speakers on stage, and then outside the stage in the hallway, you have media row, which back in the old days was like actual media, and now is just like 24 different MAGA freak podcasts and live streams, and cable Newsmax is there, and the Falun Gong network is there, Epoch Times, and all it's just Bannon's podcast. So they're all outside the hall, and that's where I ran into Gorka. I think he was going to be a guest on one of these podcasts, and I just kind of wanted to pick his brain about what was happening there.
Does he have a brain?
I think he saw. I think he saw the troublemaking glimmer in my eye. I don't know, but he wouldn't engage. So anyway, then downstairs from that there is an exhibit hall. Now, like the first thing when you walk in is this kind of booth that sells like Trumpian golden calves, just a little bit on the nose, I think, but a lot of Trump paraphernalia, bronze-plated, gold-plated Trump paraphernalia, and then you kind of just walk around and. Yeah, I mean there are every cultural war issue has a booth, but there are some, and then this is how they make money, right? There are some like mainstream issues that they try to have a booth there to be like, see, we can be conservatives to solve climate change. It's sort of like how can we maybe try to put a spin on this in a way that might appeal to conservatives, right? So there's some mainstream booths that do that, and then there's a lot of like stupid. Like they're hawking products to conservatives, like, the alternate Google and the alternate, Tinder and, the conservative, whatever. So anyway, it was in that hall that I bumped into Sarah. We had a pretty small crowd around her. When the lights turn off in the show, sometimes people's star fades. Her star seems to be fading, but she was pretty affable. Actually, we had just a little exchange, and she was trying to do a lot of Tea Party kind of reminiscing with me. Kind of like the football star talking about his high school days. And I don't know. She's divorced now, so she's got time on her hands.
And,
Unclear.
history, I guess, has been a little kind to her because by comparison to like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, like she's kind of normal when you stack her up against those two. I mean, this is just my own take. I don't know. You're looking at me like I'm
Boy,
crazy.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess stacked up next to those two, but I mean, she's still pretty Looney Tunes, and she was on the vice presidential ticket. So I don't know. I kind of look at Sarah as a little bit of the origin story of this modern wave of MAGA populism. I mean, obviously, I was on a panel in Tucson with like David Korn, who's got a book out, who was kind of like, "No, Tim, it goes back to Goldwater." And sure, I'm sure that there was like a strain of this that goes back. You could go take it back to Calvin Coolidge if you want. I don't know, but this modern kind of era where you are blending the reality TV star, the media, the performative element of populism, with the conservative culture war issues. I mean, she basically invented it. I don't think on purpose. I don't think it was like a grand plan. I just think it came natural to her because she was a good performer and she kind of had a reality TV show life, and she knew how to play to a crowd. But you can imagine this. The sad thing about Palin for me, and we didn't get a chance to talk about this, is that you really can imagine if the incentives were lined up differently, Palin kind of turning out kind of normal. Like she didn't have to turn out like this. Like Palin in Alaska was culturally conservative, no doubt. But she ran kind of as a reformer. That's why McCain picked her originally.
That's right.
Like she ran kind of right. She like went against what now was like going against the deep state and like all this nonsense was kind of legit. Like she went against like the corrupted political class there in Alaska that had been doling out grift for decades upon decades, and said, okay, I'm going to clean things up a little bit. I'm going to be a little bit more of a regular mom, that like, knows how to do a budget here in Alaska and look out for Alaskans. And like, had she not gotten sucked into the element of, oh, if I go on stage and talk about Obama palling around with terrorists, everybody cheers the loudest. Like, had she been able to kind of come in a different way where she gets molded by McCain, it's more of this kind of like reform oriented, like kind of the good kind of anti-establishment, right? Like willing to buck the status quo type. Like you could have imagined her kind of going down that path, but instead, when the lights were on, I think that she had this. Her and Trump, the one thing they have together is she had this animal instinct for kind of what the crowd wanted.
Yeah.
Right. And she could play to their baser instincts. And so I think that part of it is a little bit sad.
Yeah. Well, you can put a lipstick on a pig, right?
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
So getting back to the booth thing, because this fascinates me. Like, if I think that it's bad to have cat litter boxes in bathrooms in schools, is there like kind of a booth where I can go in and like commiserate with other anti-cat litter box people? Or is it not that extreme?
In theory, I didn't see any cat litter box, and that's a fake thing, so which I've written about, so I didn't see that particular booth. No, I would frame it's a little bit more pathetic than that. I would frame it kind of as like...
More pathetic than that?
Yeah, well, yeah, but that comes from a place of like, I'm earnestly upset about this, and we're coming together as a grassroots group to like gather up our, whatever allies to fight the cat litter box thing. Like what it really is more is like just kind of these sad, like Republican, like money hawking efforts, right? It's like some guy who's like got an idea for like, oh, I'll do a credit card and our fees won't go to the woke banks. And like, if I can just get a certain number of conservatives to sign up for this card, then I can make a little money and get a house in the Bahamas, right? Like it's much more, I don't know, like the monorail man in The Simpsons, kind of thing. Like, than it is like a genuine kind of grassroots thing. It was in a lot of ways, CPAC has sort of lost its energy. I went to the America Fest, which was the Charlie Kirk's group, Turning Point USA's thing in December in Arizona. And that was kind of scary, really. And that was like, there was a lot more, I thought, authentic energy there. And you felt like there was a little bit of the grifting kind of stuff happening, like where you felt like you're at a car show and somebody's trying to sell you, like a new fender or whatever. But like it was more of what you're talking about. People that were starting like maybe like religious, like little Republican groups, to have Bible study, or then there were like the 20-something gals who'd started like a line, an Instagram kind of line of like women who like, they have yoga pants and fellowship, and like it was a lot more, it was younger, and it felt like it was a lot more people from real America that had like really bought into all this, versus CPAC kind of felt like somebody, like a bunch of used car salesmen in the booths a little bit.
And who goes to CPAC? Is it just like every Tom, Dick, and Harry and his wife that live in the neighborhood and come and travel? And like, is it regular
it
people?
costs $300.
So it's just regular people, like they're going to the car show.
Yeah, it costs $300. So like it's real money to actually get a pass. No, I mean, so colleges sponsor it, so you get the young Republican types, and then, you get a decent amount of some regular people who are usually older, kind of empty nesters, looking for something to do, gonna sit and watch a bunch of speeches all day long, right, for 3 days. But then you really do. I think that's the difference between CPAC and like going to a Trump rally, is there's some of the Trump rally people there, but there's a lot of like people with an angle. People who have a direct mail firm in DC and are trying to get clients and trying to sell, you know what I mean? So there's a little bit more of like the, kind of, we're at a convention, I'm at the, we're all microwave salesmen, and we're all coming to meet together at the Gaylord and
right.
Whatever.
I've been to
like
conventions
network.
at the Gaylord.
Yeah. There's
so it's like vendors and so it's more traditional.
So that was CPAC. The TPUSA thing in Phoenix, I mean, I was blown away actually by just how, that crowd was also, there weren't a lot of my age people there. Like there weren't a lot of my peers' parents. Like it was mostly like grandparents and teens or early 20s types, right? At the Turning Point USA conference in December. But there were a lot of that younger cohort. And they were very animated, very excited. There was a little bit of kind of a prom element to it. Like you could tell that afterwards they're going to go out and like kind of get dressed up and maybe, find a mate for the life or the evening, depending on their what their interests were. Yeah, they're going to mate and procreate maybe. And I spoke to a lot of them, and I asked the same question to everybody, like, because I was just curious, because you know how you can just pick up the vibes of people. I don't know. I was a young Republican, as you know. I guess for people who didn't listen to our last podcast, I'm a former Republican. And so the types of kids that went to college Republican stuff in my day, back in the aughts, were like your Michael J. Fox from Family Ties types. They carried the briefcase, and we had we wore the blue blazer, and like we read God and Man at Yale, and and we were nerds, right? That were just really into politics, or economics or whatever. This crowd was not that. Like it was very, very much felt like a frat and sorority crowd. The vibe was different. It was much churchier, and so I was asking them. I asked everybody. Like my first question was, "What animates you? Like, why are you here? Like, what are the big issues for you?" And I mean, I got to a person. It was COVID restrictions they were against. It was CRT, critical race theory, woke stuff on campus.
Did you ask any of them to define CRT? Like
well,
what
no,
is
because I was just trying to chat with them. I did some of that on the Circus, but I wasn't trying to do gotchas. I was like really trying to understand why they were there.
Right.
And some of them would explain to me that they don't like the woke stuff on campus, reverse discrimination against white people, like affirmative action, et cetera, et cetera. I wasn't named the president of this club because they wanted a person of color to be the president of the club and not me, but I was a better candidate, that kind of shit. And then there was, a little bit of churchy stuff, right? Like religious and Christianity's under attack kind of thing. Like that was it. So if you go back to the old Reagan three-legged stool of republicanism was strong military, like, fighting the commies. It was, taxes and regulations. and then the third leg was like social conservatism, which at the time was basically abortion, and gays, I guess. Like none of that. It's none of that, right? A little bit abortion, right? Like that's it. Like the other two legs of the stool. I mean, most of that crowd was anti us helping Ukraine. When I would then ask that, like, aren't you? But what about like taxes and overregulation, red tape? They're like, sure, yeah, I don't like that. But that wasn't, it wasn't what was there. Like this crowd, the types of young people that now go to MAGA events are totally animated by the other new culture war stuff.
So sounds like a lot of indoctrination into all of the culture war which is just out of control.
Some indoctrination and some reactionary.
Yeah.
Like just being just anti whatever the other kids on campus are,
So on the circus, you were talking with Kari Lake,
Yeah.
who is just, I find her to be the weirdest human being ever. Like it's almost like she's like a hologram. She's just not like a real. She doesn't look real. And then the way she speaks,
kind of intoxicating in a way.
It is. It's
So?
like watching like an avatar or something. Like it's just not. She's not like a real human. But she's doing her rigged election thing, and you're trying your best to like get to the heart of that. And then at the end, she asks you how old you are, right?
Yeah.
You wanted.
And she asked me why I dress like I'm 13. And my mother thought it was a good hit. Actually, she was like, Kari made one good point. You do dress like and one of my friends from high school texted, who was watching the circus, who was like, little does Kari know, when you were 13, you dressed like you were 40. And so I've always wanted to zag away
awesome.
from what the main stream of my group is dressing like, I guess. Yeah, the Kari thing is interesting. I was hoping to get more time with her, and unfortunately, she just had at CPAC, like she was mobbed. Like I couldn't pull her away to like get a little bit of private time, because we were just, I don't know if you could tell from the video, but we were fully surrounded by people immediately, and so we couldn't really do what we wanted to do. And my plan was, which I told her staff, I was like, look, there are a couple things we got to ask her, just like, where is she on Trump? Where is she on 2024 MAGA, like the election? But like, I'd like to get into other things too. And so my strategy for the interview was, I was just going to do a little small talk at the front, right? And then kind of like ask her, throw a couple softballs, and then kind of get into the things we were going to argue about. And she wouldn't even do it. Like the small talk at the beginning, I said to her, like my first comment to her, I wanted to shower after this. I said something nice to Kari Lake. I was like, Kari, all the gays are wondering about your filter. And I just, could you just give me a little tip? Like, how are you making yourself look like that on video? And she like immediately starts yelling at me. We didn't put this on the show, but she was like, that's what the fake news cares about. That's what the lamestream. And I was like, Kari, no, I'll just we haven't started the interview yet. I was just making a little small talk. Like we were just, like this is how humans, like human to human interaction, usually starts with like some pleasantries.
Hey, how
right?
are the kids?
Hello.
How are the kids?
Yeah,
how
are the kids? Right.
How's that filter?
I have a local sports team. Right. So anyway, that's like, she's just so hardwired and robotic now to be in like, I am like a MAGA fighter and I'm playing this role. Because she hasn't always been like that. I mean, she was into Kabbalah, and she was into, like, she took her kids to a pride parade. Someone sent me old pictures. I wanted to ask her about that. I didn't get to it. So anyway, she wouldn't do any of that. And so I immediately went into, I was like, there's no point in yelling at her about the fraud and being like, well, the city council looked into it and the judges look into it, because she's already done all this. Right. And like, she doesn't care, and she's lying, she's gaslighting. So I tried to take a different tack, which was, just kind of roll with me here, Kari. Maybe it wasn't the fraud. Like, maybe you just lost because you told John McCain voters to go to hell. And maybe if you tried to broaden your appeal a little bit and reach out to, kind of the softer Republicans, the more moderate Republicans who had won before, who'd voted for people before in Arizona in your state, maybe that might have worked. She rejected that theory. It had to be the deep state that did it. But I thought maybe by kind of going into more of a mocking kind of way, I could get her off rather than like just going straight to screaming at each other. But it didn't work. She stayed on. She screamed at me. She made fun of my outfit and then stormed off. So
when you're in that moment, like when I watch those moments, as much as I love them, I always say to myself, God, what is Tim thinking right now? Like he's at CPAC, okay, so he's already like in IED territory. There are what looks like Kari Lake goons standing around, and then you're asking questions which we all want the answers to. And if I was there, I'd be asking the same exact questions. But I know what would be going on in my head. I'd be like, am I gonna get out alive after I ask this question? Like, do you have those moments where you're like, I'm going to ask it, but then I may just have to run. Like, it seems like that's the environment you're in.
Yeah, CPAC is a little, like I said, it's just a little bit, I don't know, the energy there isn't as scary. The Kari Lake events, like when I did the Bannon interview for the Circus, that would Kari Lake event in kind of ex-urban Phoenix, that crowd was a little dicey. And I did feel a little bit, not like acutely unsafe, but just sort of in the same way that you might feel unsafe if you get caught in the wrong neighborhood at night and you're a little lost and you're kind of looking around. You're like, I don't know what's happening here, right? Like I didn't feel acutely unsafe. I just felt a little uncomfortable and a little unsafe. And I was like, there are some people packing in here and they don't like me. And, I'm not scared, but I'm uncomfortable. I felt that way at her events in Arizona, and I've never felt that way at events before. So I do think that's like a palpable change in the type of crowd that is being drawn to MAGA events. But even then, when I'm talking to Steve, you just have to. I just get I just do the 1,000-mile stare. That they that's I think a military term they teach in the military. I've never been in the military, but I learned it for doing cable TV, which is it's just like stare at the camera. It's just like just give it the 1,000-mile stare and just like think about that and like just don't like your brain. I just tried to block out because I didn't even realize how many people were around us. Actually, we were like when I finished and I looked around, I was like, shit, I need a cigarette. Like I'm surrounded by people. Like
I needed a cigarette watching it.
Yeah, I need to walk outside and have a cigarette. But no, I don't. When we're engaged and it's on camera, I'm just like, I just focus my brain on here are the things I want to say, like listening to her, like making sure that we're connecting with each other, even if it's a hostile connection, but that like that we're engaged in this dialogue and just focused entirely on that.
Well, she literally proved your point, which is probably not what she intended to do. But the part about like, well, the McCain thing, like putting the accountability on her in that interview, she's nasty to you. She's evasive.
She does it again.
She does it again.
Right, and my point is like maybe if you tried to appeal to people, you would have won.
Yeah,
but instead, you can't help yourself but be a bitch.
But their strategy, all of them, their strategy is like, I just want to win a primary. Like they don't have the long game in mind. Because if she had the long game in mind and she wanted to appeal to moderate and independents in Arizona, she wouldn't be mocking the way you look or the way you dress.
Right.
So it's like it's like you cast the rod and you just reeled her in, and she thinks she's so freaking smart and she put you down. She owned you that day when I'm sure when she watched and her people watched it, and I'm sure they did, they probably didn't think they actually owned you. I think, amongst themselves, they realized you owned her. Which is the beauty of the show and the beauty of that kind of an interview. And just, that's the point about the show is to expose people for who they are. And I think you did that.
And then she storms off, right? 'Cause it's like you can't answer, right? That's right. And then that was my final comment, which is like, don't end on that. Come on.
Well, she thought she was going to hurt you. Like you're going to go, wait a minute. I actually do dress like
I care what you think. I'm so hurt by what your opinion is about my outfit.
Next time you see Tim Miller on MSNBC, he's going to be wearing a suit because of what Kari Lake did to him. Like
I'm not.
It's crazy. And so the other, were you at Trump Jr.'s speech when he called Fetterman a fucking vegetable?
I was. Yeah, I was.
Were you shocked, like even for Jr., or is like, I expected? That kind of thing.
I wasn't shocked. I mean, I thought that the gross part of the joke was, he says that he should be bagging groceries or whatever. And, okay, call Vetterman a vegetable. It's inappropriate. It's not politic. It's not broadening your appeal, as we just discussed, but like, it's politics. Okay. Everybody be a big boy, but like, it just shows how out of touch these guys are. And how cruel they are. That he's like, I've got to insult the people with Down syndrome who are bagging groceries as part of this. Like, what did they do? You know what I mean? Like, why are you just like randomly, like, you're spraying fire everywhere to the degree that like you're insulting everybody who is like trying to, make a life for themselves. And again, and that is just so. I remember in 16, everybody always was like, Jeb must have gotten very personally offended by Trump and how he insulted his wife and insulted his family, insulted his brother, and he got offended. But like the only time I ever saw Jeb like mad was when Trump made fun of Serge Kovaleski and like made fun of him for being disabled on stage. And that just because that goes to just this fundamental, like what used to be the Republican view for all of any criticism you have of Republican policies, like the well-intentioned pro-lifers like really did believe that like every life has value. Every human has value. We need to treat life with respect. And like to then like these guys are the inverse of that. Right? Like even if you didn't agree with the policy fallouts of that from what conservatives thought, would follow that view about every life having value. Like, at least there's something genuine about that. But these guys are like, no, fuck you. Like, anybody that I can use and abuse for my own personal benefit is fine, right?
Well,
and like, if
the cruelty is astounding.
Yeah.
And then you had his girlfriend or his wife or whatever the fuck she is, Kimberly.
They're not
Guilfoyle.
engaged yet. It's been a while. It's been been a long engagement. I don't know.
Yeah, what do you have? What kind of problem you have with her, Junior? But she's like, it's time to put America first. There's a case. She thinks she's hit on something, like if I just say something in that cadence, like, the best is yet to get. It is so fake and stupid looking because she's rehearsed this crap. She's rehearsed how she's going to say it, when she's going to raise her voice. And it's like, how does anyone care what this woman has to say? Why would you pay $300 to hear her?
Well, because she's in the family. Now I did get a little fun little tidbit for you in the hallway at CPAC. So Kimberly has a new podcast. Like you guys are in competitive space. Andy's podcast and Kim's.
Please.
And she.
I resent the way you said that.
Someone told me that she had been advised that a good name for the podcast would be The Devil Wears MAGA. Podcast, which would have been on the nose, kind of funny, kind of cute. Kim rejected that idea, and it's just the Kim Guilfoyle podcast, which any of our listeners can go suffer through if they want to, and it'll be just as painful as her speechifying. But yeah, I mean, I look, there were a lot. The whole Trump family, Eric's wife talked.
Jesus,
but it was like half full, it's right? Like a very cultish thing.
Wasn't it all like half or 40% full? Like, I mean, from what I saw, it was like nobody in the audience at any of these speeches. Really, it's kind of pathetic. I think I had more people at my bar mitzvah than Junior had. Yeah,
it was pretty empty. It was I left for Trump, so I didn't get to see that firsthand. But the first 2 days were pretty empty.
And what do you make of Mr. I'm your fucking vengeance. I'm your retribution. I'm Terminator. Like what was happening with that? Like that was like the darkest shit he's ever said, and he said some pretty dark shit in the past.
I mean, that first inauguration was pretty dark. So I don't know, competitive. He's mad. Is not exactly.
You mean angry mad?
Breaking,
not crazy mad, which he is also.
Both. I mean both. But this is not exactly trenchant analysis here, psychological analysis. But look, the guy is has barely left his little Elba there at Mar-a-Lago with the Cougars, and he doesn't leave the house, right?
Right.
He's upset that people took this from him when he felt like it was rightfully his. He's upset that these people are not grateful and are challenging him, the DeSantises and the Haleys of the world. He's upset at the media. He's upset that the feds are coming for him. Like, he's mad. He's a guy that has a lot of grievance built up inside of him. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that he always had, the connection with the base, is that a lot of them feel aggrieved, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that he's trying to lean on that, and I think there's a little bit of projection happening, that everybody's as mad as he is about how he feels like he's been treated. Are they? I just don't know. I think that's an open question. I don't. We'll see. I'm not. I'm open to the possibility that Trump doesn't have the magic anymore, and that there's going to be a certain core of people who that does appeal to this idea of retribution, and that are just so consumed by their hatred and their grievances and their resentments that Trump's message appeals. But Trump always, an underrated element of Trump's success in 2016 is because it didn't land for people like us, like people with high EQ that don't think being an asshole is funny and like don't like shock jocks and stuff. It was hard for us to comprehend. But for a lot of folks, Trump had a little bit of a joie de vivre about him. Like there's a little bit of comedy, there's a little bit of lightness, there was a little bit of, okay, yeah, he can be pretty harsh and he can be a bit of a dick and he can, have some tough language, but he's also the apprentice guy.
So's Uncle Harry, and we love Uncle Harry.
Yeah, he's also the apprentice. He's got this other side to him, and it's different. He's not like one of these scolds, one of these like evangelical scolds like Ted Cruz. He's from Manhattan, and he's in Home Alone, and right. So like he got both, right. So like he got the benefit of both. Like the people who loved the grievance and anger side went with him. The people who that wasn't what they liked as much. Like they liked the humor, and they liked the fact that he wasn't quite as hardline and weird as the Cruzes of the world, right? And so he gained kind of both from both camps. It'll be interesting to see if he can still summon that second part of himself, or if he's just become so consumed by hatred.
Well, it seems like he is weakened. It seems like he's a bit of a weakened animal, and I think there's going to be some indictments flying soon. So like his situation isn't getting better where it's going to empower him or make him stronger. I think he's going to become very distracted soon in some very big ways. And we saw this yesterday with the Manhattan DA likelihood of indicting him soon. But the question is, it's not going to impact him getting nominated because the math doesn't change. If there's 10 people running, which there's probably going to be, and the 20% or the 30% MAGAs still vote for him, he gets the nomination. And then we're still like, I just don't see that changing. I don't know
if I agree with that.
Well, tell me how it changes. Where are those 20 or 30% of the Republican crowd who are diehard MAGAs, where are they going in the primaries? Are they voting for somebody else?
No, they're sticking with him. No, they're sticking with him. Who knows what his floor is? I think his floor is probably in the 20s somewhere.
So who's going to pull more than 20%?
DeSantis could. So here, the big middle of this primary is this is, I think, another thing that's hard for people to understand who just are just filled with such loathing of him, and or people who could see him clearly, actually, might be a better way to describe this community. It's hard to understand, but the big swing voter in the Republican primary likes Trump, might be ready to move on. That's the key voter in this primary. Okay. There's a group of only Trumpers. Maybe that's 20%. Maybe it's 15. Maybe it's 30. We'll find out. There's a group of people that are like really, really sick of him. That's probably 8%. It's very small. Everyone else, the other 60% like him, but are open to hearing other pitches. Okay. So these are not people that are going to be interested in Chris Sununu, right? They're not going to be interested in Tim Miller and the Bulwark's candidate of choice, right? But if someone can come to them and say, hey, I'm going to give you the MAGA stuff you like, but I'm not going to have quite as much of the baggage. I think that's open. Can Ron DeSantis? Now that's very challenging to do, right? It's a very tight tightrope to walk. Can Ron DeSantis do that for a full year? Is Donald Trump cunning enough to block him out and to kind of win back some of those? Yeah, sure. Is he the favorite? Donald Trump's the favorite, of course. But to win this primary, he needs to win over people that like him but aren't so sure that they want him to run again. He needs to win them back into his camp, because this is not going to be a situation where you can win this primary with 28%. Donald Trump won last time with 40-something%. And that's what you need. You need to get over 40. Okay. You don't like this notion that like Trump's going to get 28 and DeSantis going to get 25 and Haley's going to get 24. That's not how this works. Like the field narrows and you eventually need to be able to get a plurality, right? Like that could work for Trump in one state, right? Like in South Carolina or New Hampshire, maybe he wins with 30 or something. But once you get to the big states, you need to be able to win a big plurality. And that's true in every presidential primary that we've had in modern times. And so can he? I think he could do that. Yeah, but I don't. I think that counting out the fact that someone else could do it, I think is a mistake.
But you see, this is kind of the problem with the high IQ crowd that you and I are in, because we think our default is to operate in the logical, right?
Right.
But the thing about Donald Trump, what makes him so special and so successful, is that he's not tethered to reality. He's not tethered to the truth. So let's just envision a debate stage, the very first debate stage. Ron DeSantis, if he runs, I'm not so sure he's running, but let's say he runs.
He's running.
He's going to say something, and he's going to go on the offensive, and Donald Trump is going to be like, oh, yeah, well, why don't you tell him about that trans guy you had an affair with in high school? And DeSantis is going to stand there like a deer in the headlights, like Marco Rubio did and all the others did, and he's going to have to decide in a split second, do I acknowledge and defend this bullshit, or do I ignore him, or what? And then Trump just stands there and goes, he had an affair with a trans kid in high school. And then the next night, Tucker Carlson is going to be saying, was there a trans kid in high school? And then all of a sudden, DeSantis becomes Marco Rubio. And he's just like shrunk down to nothing. Because Donald Trump will say anything. He doesn't care about the truth. He has no shame. It doesn't have to be true. It's just when he feels threatened, he lashes out. And the other people are bullied, and they don't know how to fight that. And so DeSantis's career could end on that very first stage, because he's going to prove to the MAGAs that he's not strong, he's not courageous, he dated a trans kid in high school. Like, this is how it works with Trump, and it's so fucked up that it's hard for people with a half a brain to really understand the landscape he travels in and the landscape that his supporters travel in. The women who wear T-shirts that with an arrow that say, he can grab my pussy anytime. Like, what world do we live in with this? It's a cult, right? And so it's hard to wrap your head around that kind of cultish mentality and a cult leader. That's how I think it could all go south.
There's a cult element to it. And then I think some questions, what do the cult people do if he loses? There are a lot of open questions. And I think that could absolutely happen to DeSantis. DeSantis has one thing going for him that Marco Rubio didn't have, though, which is that the MAGAs like him. And so, again, we just don't know. We don't have a comp for this, right? Like, Trump emasculated, embarrassed, dominated Cruz, Rubio, my boss, Kasich, Rand Paul, you name them, all of them. None of them had any real connection to the MAGA base. Some of them had their own little niche groups. Like, Cruz had a group of like social conservative weirdos that were like with him till the end, but like none of them had any real connection to this Trump MAGA base, which consists of two people: the new people Trump brought in, on top of the old Pat Buchanan style Republicans that never had anybody that represented them. That was always 20% of the party, basically. So that gets you about 30%, basically. The old 20% plus the people Trump brought in. None of those people didn't like any of the other guys. So they relished the fact that Trump was emasculating them. If Trump starts doing Meatball Ron, Tiny D, that's going to work for 15% of the people. That's going to work for 20%. But is there another 20% that are like, no, actually, fuck you, actually, a little bit. No, not fuck you, but not. I don't like that. Actually, you're hurting us. Like, we want to win. We don't know, right? Like, so the question is, this big group that like Trump believe that there was an election fraud, but are they really sure it was stolen? Right? Like, I'm not talking about the 25%, which is way too many people, by the way, tens of millions of people. It's a huge problem. But let's just put this other problem over in a box, like the Trump cult problem, the people who think that he really is a legitimate president, and that, the lizard people stole the election and Hillary eats babies' faces and stuff like that. I put those people over in a box. This next group over, I kind of believe that there was some election chicanery, but I don't know. I mean, was the Chinese really messed? Hugo Chavez, the voting machine. Some of the stuff's a little ridiculous. Like, right, that group. What do they do when Trump starts trying his alpha dog game on DeSantis? I'm not saying it's not going to work. I'm just saying we don't really have a comp from 2016, and DeSantis has one thing that is working for him, and the way he's done it, by the way, is pretty gross. He's gained a this kind of affection from that group by doing what Trump did, being cruel to trans kids, being cruel to refugees, being cruel to gays, right? Like, attacking Disney because they had a gay kiss in there, right? Like that's how DeSantis has done it. And so he's built up some credibility there. So I'm a little bit more on the I'm excited. I'm excited is the wrong word. I'm interested. I'm not excited. I wish that this would be an Iran-Iraq war situation. You can't no sides to root for, but I'm interested to see how that'll wear.
And so far we see Nikki Haley coming in. Larry Hogan said he's not running. DeSantis is a question mark. Some people like yourself think he's going to run. I'm not so sure. What about like a Mike Pence? And who else do you see who may not be on the radar right now, but could enter in a couple of months and literally gain some traction, like a Glenn Youngkin or somebody else? Like, is there anyone? Does Pence have a shot?
No. The only person that could do it is someone that is MAGA. This is a MAGA party. Okay, this is if you smell like a bush, if the vibes you're giving off are this guy might be a little bushy, no chance. Okay, the party's moved on. It's a MAGA party. They don't hate Glenn Youngkin. They don't hate Nikki Haley. They don't hate Mike Pompeo. They all seem fine. But they're not going to be the number one choice. No, life. Who knows what happens? Could Ron DeSantis poop his pants on stage and Donald Trump go to jail? And, then there's this open field for, right? I mean, is there so you're saying there's a chance Dumb and Dumber possibility that Glenn Youngkin could win? Sure. Like, who the hell knows, right? Like, life is contingent. But presuming the current environment stays the same, the only person that could disrupt the Trump DeSantis fight is someone else who feels authentically MAGA. And I just don't know who that is. Like in a different world, if Tucker wasn't going through his own problems at Fox, if Kari Lake had won in Arizona, I would say, okay, Kari Lake and Tucker, they feel MAGA, right? Like they could one of them could do it. But Kari Lake, you can't run after losing. And Tucker has his own problems right now. It doesn't seem like he wants to run anyway. And if he does, now we got this text about how he despises Trump passionately.
Right.
So is there someone else like a Kristi Noem maybe, right? Like, maybe somebody totally off the radar like that. But to me, it's pretty much a two-man race, barring a really big shakeup.
And just mentioning Kari Lake again, you think she's going to be his VP, Trump?
Trump is cunning. Okay, he's crazy, but he's cunning. I just think that's too crazy. I mean, he really does feel like he's going to need to win. I see more of like an Elise Stefanik. He made a practical choice with Pence, right? And the end of the day, that wasn't who he wanted. He made a deal. He's like, I'm going to need the evangelicals. I'm going to make Pence. I think he's going to want somebody more loyal than Pence, but he's going to know he needs to be able to kind of like appeal to some new people.
But would she do that? Would she,
knowing
what we know about
Elise
her
Stefanik?
and how she started, because she wasn't a MAG. I mean, she was fairly middle of the road. Like, would she tie her rope to that horse?
I think so.
Really?
I don't know for sure, but I think so. I mean, the possibility, all of a sudden, Andy, you put your head on the pillow, you start thinking, man, Joe Biden's 82, Kamala's not very popular, economy, electoral college works in our favor. All of a sudden, I'm the VP, Trump has a heart attack, I'm the president, right? You just start the visions of sugar plums start dancing in your head, I know it's dark, but I'm
think
inside
about that
her
next
head.
time I think about maybe making you my VP. Like,
yeah, I'm inside her head, and she stabbed Liz Cheney in the chest to get this job.
She did,
and I think that I'm
what
not saying
about
definitely
Liz?
her,
Is she
but
gonna,
I just mean somebody
run?
like her.
Is Liz gonna run?
I don't believe so.
No.
I don't have any inside knowledge on that, but I don't believe so.
And my last question, I want to ask you about all this Fox stuff. You mentioned Tucker. Like, what is happening there? Because they're still doing this shit. Monday night, he's putting out his this is the report from my investigation, and there was no insurrection. That's the conclusion of the report. These were sightseers.
Yeah. There's a lot of great gossip in there, a lot of stuff we could chat about. And I was joking about how, man, these guys behind the scenes sound like Never Trumpers, which I kind of love. Sounds like the Bulwark podcast when they're in private. But The one sentence from the one email that really just describes everything is Rupert Murdoch saying when he was saying why he's putting Lengyel back on TV. It's not about red or blue. It's about green.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about green. And that's really just what it comes down to. It's about the money. They need the audience. The audience, in order to avoid losing audience share to all those crazy people I was talking about at CPAC, all those podcasts, all those live streamers I was talking about, in order to avoid losing audience share to Real America's Voice and Newsmax, they got to hold the line. They got to hold the line and maintain the MAGA cults base, because those are people that watch TV all day, right? Like your soft Republican who kind of sucked it up and voted for Trump but thinks he's kind of crazy and doesn't really think the election was stolen. They might watch Bret Baier's show or something, or they might flip on Fox when there's news, but they don't sit around and watch 12 hours of Fox a day. The people that they're monetizing are the people that sit around and watch 12 hours of Fox today, and they're in the MAGA cult.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to appeal to the MAGA cult. And if you don't, they will leave you. And they saw that. They saw it all happening before their eyes. That's what this lawsuit's all about. Is like they lied about the election because they were losing audience. Like that's the nuts of the lawsuit.
But it's pretty clear from what he did Monday night that they don't really give a shit about this lawsuit. And they don't care.
Give a shit about keeping their audience.
Yeah. So the real question is not will they lose this suit, because it kind of, when you look at malice and intent, it's certainly those texts. I mean, it's from Murdoch on down. It's a provable case, but it doesn't seem like they care. So what's going to change? Is anything going to change if they lose that suit? Not maybe at OAN or Newsmax or other places that literally could be put out of business if they do the same shit. But is anything going to happen to change? Anything going to change at Fox, which has been poisoning the minds of people for the last several decades?
No. And you know how we know? Because we just tried this. After January 6th, there was a moment where Rupert's like, we're sick of it. We're sick of the losing. I'm sick of Trump. We're sick of the crazy. They could have made a big pivot in 2021. They could have said, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're taking a little hit with the audience, but whatever. We're still a big company. We're going to take all these crazy people off the air. We're going to put Dana Perino in prime time, or, we're going to put one of our more normal people, in the Tucker slot or the Laura slot. And we're going to chill out a little bit and, bring back the Shep Smith show, or, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to make a pivot to try to appeal to more center-right people and kind of like take a little bit of an audience hit. But like, it's gotten too crazy. It's gotten too out of hand. We're too exposed. They did the opposite. They fucking doubled down on crazy.
Right.
And they pulled off Lou Dobbs, who was doing the North Korea show. Okay, so they pulled off the one most craziest person. But then their primetime lineup is as crazy as ever.
Yeah.
The Fox and Friends is as crazy as ever. They've cut a lot of their news people from the middle of the day, and they're doing more commentary. They've got gut felt. You know what I mean? So we know what they're going to do. We've seen it. So I think they'll just take the hit and keep on chugging.
Well, we'll leave on that optimistic note.
Yeah, hey, I'm here. I'm just here to brighten everybody's day.
Well, thanks. You've been generous again with your time. Really appreciate you coming on. Hope you're coming back again. And let's pray that things change, because some of this stuff is just ridiculous. So thanks for coming
Andy,
on.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you so much.
All righty. Likewise. That's episode 50. If you like what you've been hearing, and even if you don't, let us know. We appreciate the feedback. You can leave us a message at 845-307-7446. Email us at backroomandy@gmail.com or tweet to me at Andy Ostroy. And when you listen, please take a quick moment to rate and review. It's very helpful. I want to thank my co-producer, engineer, and editor, Matty Rosenberg, associate producer, Jen Hammoud, Cricket Lengyel for our artwork, Andy Hollander for our kick-ass music, Patricia Wynn and the Epicurean for the Backroom Studio. And a big thank you again to our guest, Tim Miller. So keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Have a great week.